Tony Connelly of Irish TV.
Thank you. For Mr. Dijsselbloem, with the political agreement on the direct recapitalisation now complete, I'm just wondering what your response is to the Irish government's aspirations for retroactive direct recapitalisation for the banks that got into trouble before the ESM was up and running. They say that that is grounded still in the commitment in June 2012 at the Eurozone summit, yet there are increasing soundings from not just political soundings from the capitals over the past couple of years, but also from a senior Eurozone official on Monday who said that for political and technical reasons it would be extremely unlikely that a retroactive recapitalisation of Irish banks could actually take place. Is that your view? Thank you.
Thank you. In the a political agreement, the possibility of retroactive use is left open. So once the parliamentary procedures have been completed and the instrument becomes available, technically speaking, it will be possible. Politically, it would be difficult. And if you look at the size of the instrument, there's been a cap of the size of the instrument that could be used. That could also put a constraint on what we can do. So I think the next step is to complete the parliamentary procedures, to get it up and running, and then we'll see whether there are any realistic requests from member states to use the instrument. That will be the right order. There's very little I can say in definite terms.
Rebecca Christie of Bloomberg.
Thanks very much. Rebecca Christie from Bloomberg. Wanted to ask Mr. Regling about the ESM's investment strategy, given the ECB's recent moves and negative rates. How will that affect what you do? And also on the funding side, did you discuss possibility of borrowing in other currencies or in other places? Thank you.
Yes, with our 80 billion euro in paid-in capital, we are one of the big investors in the world now. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we invest this conservatively. The idea is not to make as much money as possible, but to preserve the capital, because it serves to give assurance to our bondholders that they will always be paid on time. So that's why we have to invest very conservatively, which also means short term. Therefore, we are, like any other investor, affected by recent decisions of the European Central Bank. We take that into account. We are like any other big investor. We have our regular internal meetings on that. It probably means that the return on this investment will become smaller. It has not been very high, given that since the beginning of the ESM we have already had low interest rates, and we only invest in products that have a rating of AA or better. So it will become a bit less, but I don't expect any losses, because we do invest more than only short term. On your second question, indeed, we are looking at the possibility of raising funds in other markets, in other currencies. So far, all our activities are in euro, which is understandable. Our balance sheet is in euro, all our lending is in euro and will continue to be in euro. So if we raise funds in other currencies, we have to hedge that, which of course is possible, but we have to develop the instruments internally in order to be confident that we can manage this also from a risk perspective in a good way. So that's why it takes a while. We are looking into that possibility. It would broaden our investor base, because there are pension funds, for instance, in the US that only invest in US dollars. We have similar situations in Japan, for instance. So we are looking into this possibility, but we do not intend to do anything of this sort this year.
And I also saw Selina Messiger from EFE.
Mr. Regling, I wondered if you have received finally from Spain the request for the early repayment, and if you would recommend the Spanish government that they would accelerate the repayment because of the good situation they are right now in the markets?
Yes, we are discussing with the Spanish authorities the modalities of this, including the timing. We are not sending requests to our borrowing member states for early repayment. It's their decision. In principle, even with the falling interest rates, where it's easier for every country to obtain funds in the markets, we are still cheaper. I think Spain was in a very special situation where for one big bank, because it was partly privatized again, so money came into the Spanish treasury and the money became available and can be used for repayment. But I think that's in a very special situation, and I do not expect that to be repeated in the other countries.
I understand that the Spanish government has to request to the board of directors of the ESM to repay the credit early. Did you receive?
This is correct. Yeah, we are talking with them about this, but you're right. Before it can happen, our board of directors has to approve that. So there has to be a formal legal decision, which has not taken place, but we are preparing that.
Question from the colleague from Greece.
Athanasios with the Real News. You're definitely very cheap as a lender. This 8.6 billion for savings the Greek budget made this year may be huge, but it seems that the Greek authorities may want to increase that figure by having even more attractive terms. So what's the margin for maneuver for your organization to, let's say, lower the interest rates or extend the maturities so you're not losing money out of the Greek operation? And if that happens, will it come with new terms or the existing terms and that's over? Thanks.
From the EFSF perspective, there's basically no room for additional relief because we are charging our funding cost. So if we charge less than that, then we would need to be compensated by somebody else, which could only be the budgets of our member states. I don't see the appetite for that. So I don't think we can lower our interest rates further. They are low, as you point out. There's sometimes a discussion in the media, not in the official fora, about a further lengthening of maturities. In theory, that's possible. As I said, not yet discussed in the Eurogroup or Board of Directors, Board of Governors. But that would not affect the debt service payments at the moment. It would have an impact after 25 years, but not now. The savings on EFSF lending are so sizable, I think that's recognized also by the Greek authorities. When there's a discussion about further reduction in interest rates, it relates typically to some other parts of official lending, like the first package which was put together on a bilateral basis, the Greek loan facility. There might be room, although it's also not easy. But all this will be discussed later in the year, so I cannot give you a view on that. It will come back in the autumn. First, we need the next review of the Troika.
Anne Bauer from Les Echos.
Two questions. One for Mr. Regling. It's a bit provocative, but if you don't have any state to rescue in the future, what will become of the ESM, and have you thought about a sort of further strategy for the fund? And for Mr. Dijsselbloem, the debate is launched about revising the rules, or maybe the interpretation or the style of the Stability Pact, with the nomination of the new Commission and all the debate about the priorities, which will be on growth and so on. And at one point you said that maybe we could have more time for more reforms. Is it still your point of view, and how do you plan to defend it?
Well, on your first question, I don't find it provocative at all. I actually gave you the answer already in my initial statement, because I pointed out that even after we have done the last few disbursements, and I mentioned there are some outstanding for Greece and Cyprus. Once that's done, we have to manage a balance sheet of 238 billion euro, with a mismatch between liabilities and assets. So that requires liquidity management. It requires regular funding operations, every year 30 to 40 billion euro. We will continue to invest, obviously, our 80 billion in paid-in capital. We are preparing the direct bank recapitalization instrument. So there are many things to do, even as we are moving out of this crisis.
I'm a little hesitant to go into your second question, not because I don't like talking about it, but because this is the press conference of the ESM, and I'm here as the chairman of the Board of Governors of the ESM. So possibly we'll meet later today at the Eurogroup press conference, and then if it's still on the top of your mind, please ask me again. I think that would be the right approach.
And as the Eurogroup is about to start, we will conclude this press conference here. There will be the other one later on, so thank you very much for the time being.